Sometimes in our society, what we get is we get the wrong inputs, therefore, we get the wrong outputs. And so sometimes you have people who will identify a problem, which is what the left particularly is really good at, is identifying problems. But typically, what they will get wrong is the cause, and therefore the solution is wrong. And they also don't seem to understand quite often that values exist but are stacked in a hierarchy by individuals, not by groups. So what you'll see is all these people talking about how white women voted or how Latinos voted, completely ignoring that the story is not of Latinos as a wide block, which includes illegal immigrants. It is Latinos, as in individual Latinos, voting for their own best interest, which does not include having a ton of illegal immigration because it hurts them too. See, if you think about things individually and not as a group, this stuff starts making a lot more sense. Just because your name is Miguel Rodriguez does not mean all of a sudden everybody with a similar sounding name is has the same brain as you. We're all individuals. You may be a man or a woman. Okay, so you have a gender or a sex. You may be a father or a husband or a brother. That's one hat. You may work at a white collar job. You may work at a blue collar job. That's a completely different hat. As you start having all these different things, whether you've got children, whether you got multiple children, whether you're married and not married, all this stuff eventually goes down to the individual and what the individual thinks is best for himself and his family. All these people who are claiming that they were voting for their children, they weren't really voting for their children. They were voting to virtue signal because you have everything that you need. And what you then start doing is looking at the hierarchy of values and you start voting for other things. I'll give you a good example. There's a book, it's called Policy Paradox. I forgot who wrote it, but I had to read it in college. And Policy Paradox, what it really teaches you is that it's the old Thomas Sowell, there are no answers, there are only trade-offs. In other words, when it comes to left and right, they have different brains. This is something that comes from Jonathan Haidt. So liberals tend to value security more than liberty, let's say. So you'll more than likely see somebody on the left who will support hate speech laws, will more likely support gun bans, because the idea is they want to feel secure from offense. People saying things that they don't mean, calling people istophobes and all this kind of stuff. They don't want people to be able to express bias. So they will love to have hate speech laws that where you can't, call people out of their names and hurt them as a group. Of course, that says no groups, it's all individuals, right? And they want to ban guns because they hate the idea of people being shot in the street and school shootings and mass shootings and stuff like this. All this stuff can be perfectly explained. The problem is the other side of the aisle may value liberty more, meaning that in a society that values liberty, you realize that people are going to abuse their rights. Somebody is going to call you the N word if you're black. Somebody may call you the F word if you're gay. Somebody may, cuss at you or whatever. It just comes as part of the territory. That's part of free speech. If you accept free speech for what it is, you accept verbal abuse sometimes. And the idea is when it comes to guns, you realize that because you support the individual ownership of weapons, that people are going to utilize those weapons individually, whether they are involved in a school shooting, they may involve in something like an armed robbery, or they may just commit suicide with it. That's just part of having human liberty, is that people are going to make bad decisions with their rights. But that does not mean that you should not have those rights. But furthermore, typically how you look at things from a hierarchy standpoint is that everybody values liberty. Everybody values security. But what do you value more? That's where people start getting the schism. between the left and the right, because the right values liberty, right? But the left, may value security. But then you will have those situations where the right wants to stop certain liberties, abortion being one of those things. Another one of those things is burning the flag, defacing Bibles. The right will absolutely throw you in jail for stuff like that because they find it to be abhorrent. They have a moral disgust towards that sort of thing, while the left sees that as free speech, or in terms of abortion, bodily autonomy. So when the right, which was largely against the vaccine for the reason of bodily autonomy, they expected the left to join them in that debate about bodily autonomy, because obviously bodily autonomy is an important thing, right? At least that's what you were told. And then you realize, nope, the left values security more than liberty. So while you were talking about your bodily autonomy when it comes to COVID vaccines, they were talking about locking you up because they wanted protection. They value security more than liberty. And then the right is vice versa. They value liberty more than security. So if everybody got COVID, the right will say, well, survival of the fittest. If you're an old lady, if you're more susceptible, too bad. You may take some measures to not get it, but we have to live our lives. And people thought that was evil. It was cold. It was vicious. But it's an expression of people's liberties. Another thing that constantly has a problem is efficiency and effectiveness. So when it comes to efficiency, meaning getting the most with the least, the left doesn't seem to value that at all, because what they'll do is they will look at something that is quote unquote effective, but it's not in any way efficient. Trade unions. Everybody knew this was going to come up eventually. But fixing the roads, here's this big thing here in Michigan, right? They say fix the damn roads. You can get the roads fixed with union labor. It's going to cost you more money though, because they're going to drag out a 4-hour job into an 8-hour job, because why in the world would you cut yourself out of more money? Now, an effective way to do things, or a more efficient way to do it, would be just to hire contractors to fill the hole. They may do it in 3 hours, while a union, it may take them 12 or 2 days. Therefore, things don't actually get done. And once you have a society built off people who value effectiveness but not efficiency, what they'll do is they'll stack things with bureaucrats. So then you'll get teachers. Teachers can be effective, but they're not in any way efficient. They waste a lot of resources. They waste a lot of time. And when you're wasting resources, you're wasting the taxpayers' money. And the left doesn't really seem to care about that, while the right cares a lot about that a lot. So when you see the right talking about destroying the Department of Education because it's inefficient, it doesn't work, well, they're looking at it from the perspective of it's inefficient and it's ineffective, which technically it is. I mean, that's just my opinion. You could disagree. But in certain cases, things are effective, but they're inefficient. Libraries is another one. A library is highly effective in terms of helping to educate the neighborhood, but they're not efficient because very few people actually use libraries, and they're money pits. You pay these people to be in there 8 hours a day. They don't likely have 8 hours worth of work to do at a library. But at the same time, would you even have a library if it was a for-profit business? Probably not. And this is where you get like nonprofits and stuff like this, but that's neither here nor there. So to double back to what I said earlier, technically what you have, the difference between the left and the right, is the right tends to sometimes look at people as individuals and say, this is better for you as an individual. It's better for you as an individual if you're able to have gun rights. It's better for you as an individual for you to have free speech. It's better for you as an individual to have access to gas-powered cars or whatever, okay? While the left look at things from a collective point of view. It's better for everybody to have a safe and stable environment. So you'll have, from this would come stuff like the Green New Deal. Are you causing smog? Are you poisoning the rivers or something like that? It's always constantly thinking about the collective. And there's some use to that. But too much of that, and what you do is you smother people. You smother them in laws, you smother them in rules, and they start to rebel against you. So the Donald Trump election was about that specifically. The written and unwritten rules that the left imposes on people, either through the government or just through social rules. And a lot of those social rules, and I hate to be sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, sort of cliche, but one of those social rules is largely about transgenderism and how you talk about women. The idea is you have to, quote unquote, be nice, and that a man that's put on a dress is a woman. If someone chooses the pronouns she, her, then you have to call them she, her. And these rules are oppressive. And it causes all of these social issues because these things come with a fist behind them. It's not just a suggestion like, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we just, called somebody who wanted to be called a she, even though he was born a man? Why don't we just call him she? It's not going to hurt anybody. It's like, sure. But what about those people who don't want to do that, who don't feel like that's the appropriate way to go in life? Well, we have to fire those people. Okay, so now we have a problem. Because it's not just a matter of individuals choosing to not play by these rules. You're not forcing these rules on the collective. Everybody has to play by these rules, not just the people you have decided, not just you individually deciding that if I meet a trans person, I'm going to call that trans person by the pronouns that they chose, which nobody has a problem with. The issue is now everybody has to do it. When other people are like, no, they may have moral objections to it. They may have religious objections to it. They may have any other kind of objection to it. And then what you end up getting called is an istophobe, and you start name calling. And that name calling starts having real weights in the real world. When you start calling people names and they start losing their job or they start having other kinds of problems, now you've created an environment where people are going to start fighting back. And now they may call these trans people he and him out of malice, not out of mere disagreement, but straight up out of malice. And you created a lot of times your own oppression, just like the right did at one point when they were being oppressive. When the right wing was trying to stamp out things like rap music, and it only made rap music more and more raunchy. The more you tried to stamp it out, the more outrageous it became. It was the same thing with rock music. The more they tried to stamp out rock music, the more demonic and the more people played into it. The more you started having Alice Cooper bite off the heads of chickens or whatever on stage. I think that was Ozzy Osbourne. I think he bought a bit of that or something like that. It's like the more you try to fight against it, the more you try to have all these social rules against it, the more people are for it, because people are naturally rebellious. That's what especially teenagers and young people. So I see on television all the time, young men have been radicalized by Andrew Tate and right-wing grifters and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, no, they're just boys. They grew up in a certain environment where they can't say certain things. They can't do certain things. They're being punished for things that are not illegal, and they're losing their jobs and they're getting fired and they're having a hard time, and they're just rebelling against you. You have become the thing that you claim to hate. The left was always supposed to be like about the revolution and overthrowing the status quo. And then you became the status quo. And just like every revolutionary, it went from, we got to purge. We won. Now we got to protect the revolution. Now we got to protect everything that we had. So that becomes, in and of itself, a whole new problem. So politics is not personal. It ain't meant to be personal. It's not meant to have this much control over your life. Policy has some level of control because it's wide ranging, and something like, I don't know, Trump talking about tariffs. Something like that is going to have a sweeping effect on human beings, but it's not about race or gender or anything like that. He has stated a problem. His problem is he wants to have more manufacturing in the United States. And in order to do that, he has to somehow incentivize the companies to build in the United States. Well, how do you do that? Well, if you put tariffs on everything that they import, and then you say, stop importing, build your stuff here, you won't have to deal with the tariffs, well, then people will start building stuff here, right? Well, he's has a hierarchy of values. He has a logic to what he wants to do. Now, we could disagree about whether tariffs are the right way to do things or not, but it's not a Nazi or a fascist thing to do. It's just a policy decision that you don't like. When you start talking about how can we make life better for the lower classes of people, which I'm not sure everybody wants to do that, but that's a stated goal from both the left and the right, is to help the underclass. Well, do you help the underclass by dumping a bunch of other underclass people in there that now are competing with them for labor and housing? Well, the right and Donald Trump said, no, that's not how you do it. You get those people out of the way so that the people who were born there and live there can have more opportunities. Well, then the left says, well, what about the rest of the world? And it's like, but you're not running for president of the planet Earth. You're running for president of the United States. That is a unique collective. That is not global anything. So when you look at how Donald Trump and why he won, you can listen to all these people who are saying, hey, he won because most of the country are racist Nazis. Okay, you played that game before and you lost. And you're going to keep losing as long as you keep thinking about things that way. As long as you keep looking at the problems and missing what the cause of the problem is, you're never going to get to the solution. And the solution is what everybody wants to get to. But you want to mire everything up in, well, this is not really even a problem, or is it a problem? Or, it's a problem, but this is how you fix it. I'll give you a good example of this. Housing, right? So the left thinks that you can just fix housing by giving people houses. You just give people houses, that fixes the housing problem. Well, what they don't understand is that housing, a lot like income inequality and wealth inequality, is not about what you think it's about. Wealth inequality is not about income, and it's not about jobs. It's about human behavior. More people make decisions that erode their wealth every single day. People make decisions that erode their ability to get houses every single day. Part of it is we need to build more houses. That's one thing. But another part of it is people who destroy their credit very early in life. Getting credit cards, going to college, letting your mama put the lights in your name when you're 12 years old or something silly like that. And now it's very difficult for you to get a loan later on. You went and got a car. Now you got this huge amount of debt, and now nobody want to give you any money so you can get a house. These kinds of things happen, and these are individual decisions. These are not group-based decisions. Now, some of this stuff may sound like it's group-based, but it's not. Okay? So when you try to figure out what the problem is, you have to marry the problem with the solution. You're never going to get things right if you keep looking at things wrong. And I truly believe that a lot of the problem with the left wing is that they do not know how to identify the cause of a problem. They can identify the problem, homelessness, income inequality, etc., etc. But then when you start asking about how did that happen, how did that come to be, you start getting a bunch of collective responses. Oh, it's redlining, it's racism, it's homophobia, it's transphobia, it's this, it's that. It's like, well, no, it's an individual thing. Every individual homeless person or person who are struggling has an individual story. Now, a bunch of them that may have a similar story, drug and alcohol abuse, mental illness, trouble at home where you come from an abusive household or something like that. None of this has anything to do with racism or transphobia or anything like that. It's just simple storytelling. People who tend to be mentally ill can't take care of themselves very well, and therefore they end up on the street. They piss off members of their family, and those people don't want to do anything with them anymore. Sometimes they engage in criminal behavior. People don't want anything to do with them anymore. So that becomes that becomes the problem. And so you have to marry the solution with the cause. There's not going to be a one size fits all solution. There's never going to be that. Hell, there may not be a solution at all, because at least when it comes to the poor, like the Bible says, the poor will always be with us. But that doesn't mean that individuals have to always be poor. Certain people are going to be able to make it out. Certain people are going to be able to rise up. You have to give those people an opportunity to do so. But if you keep incentivizing people through welfare, entitlements, etc., they'll never rise up. You just make them comfortable in their misery. And this is something that the left loves to do. They want to make people comfortable. And that's why they push for things like Social Security. Hey, just go, you're 65, and they lead you to believe that you're entitled to retire at 65. Who said? Like, where does that rule come from that everybody should retire at 65? Nobody. That's literally created out of thin air. So you take that entitlement into account. It's supposed to make you comfortable as an adult when you're in your older age, so you won't have to work. And I'm looking at this thing and saying, yeah, but who's paying for that? Well, the kids are paying for it. So you're going to rob the kids to pay the grown-ups, their grandparents, essentially, so that their grandparents can sit at home. Well, each kid who loves Meemaw may say, well, I don't mind working so my grandma can live straight. But what about the people whose grandmas are already dead? Now I'm being forced to work to take care of your grandma. Well, that's not right. I don't know your grandma. She might even hate my guts. That's not the right thing to do. And then what about my family? These are why individual decisions need to be made about things like retirement. You might not be able to make it to 65. You may die at 62. Do you get that money back? Do your family get that money back if you die before you can get it? No. It just gets dispersed to somebody else. And then you have other people can get Social Security without even reaching the age of 65. You can get Social Security nowadays if you're mentally ill, if you're seriously injured, you can get Social Security. This stuff is never as simple as they will lead you to believe. So you can look at things like MSNBC. You can look at things like CNN. You can listen to a lot of leftist YouTubers, and they'll tell you about how every single group and, white men are racist and white women are racist and Latinos are racist. Everybody's a racist. That doesn't work. It doesn't explain anything to you. You won't understand a fucking thing listening to those people. Why? Because they don't know what the cause of the problem is. They have a problem. They lost. They are trying to figure out why they lost. And they want a simple answer that does not require for them to sit down and look in the mirror and say, maybe our values are wrong. Maybe we came up with the wrong response. Maybe we cared about the wrong thing. We ran an entire campaign on abortion. How many people care about abortion? Young women care about abortion because they're out here having sex willy-nilly and they don't want to be able to, they want to be able to control contraception or whatever. Okay, but what about children under the age of being able to have kids? Those people matter too. What about the older people who are too old to have abortions? Those people matter too. When I see like somebody like Michelle Obama talking about abortion, like that's the number one most important thing in the world, I say to myself, okay, I have no sisters. My female cousins have all the kids that they're going to have. I don't really care what they do. My mom is in her 60s. She's not having any kids. And my girlfriend wish she could have a goddamn baby. Why? Abortion does not apply to me. So I don't go and vote against abortion. I have other things that matter. I go back to the hierarchy. What matters more? And you go back and you say, okay, abortion doesn't really apply to me. I'm a male, for starters. Secondly, no female I know is about to have an abortion or even interested in abortion. Or if they are interested, it's not the most important thing in their life. So abortion goes down as a thing that's not that important. Things that are important. I see a bunch of young men out here with nothing to do. They need jobs and opportunities. So if somebody's talking about bringing manufacturing back, do I think it's going to work? No. It ain't going to work as well as he thinks it does. But it's worth a try. It's better than people just ignoring the problem. When you start hearing about, how illegal immigration is damaging the inner city. You have Venezuelan gangs taking over neighborhoods. Is that a good thing? No, that's a problem. Why aren't we trying to fix that problem? Well, somebody's talking about fixing that problem. While this other person is dancing with Meg Thee Stallion. Who's going to fix the problem? Meg Thee Stallion? She's not going to fix a goddamn thing. You have to figure out why you lost. If Trump is talking about problems and solving problems, even if he can't do it, it's a lot better than I'm sitting here watching you stroll with the AKAs. It's a completely different thing. Yes, Donald Trump is out here clowning with the McDonald's and the garbage truck and all this kind of stuff. But you have to understand, he's talking to average people about the problems that the average person has. You're talking about things that symbolically only matter to a small number of people. A large number of these people just voted for Kamala Harris because we want to have a black woman in office. Like it's her turn. We're not playing a video game where everybody gets to take a turn. This is people's lives we're talking about here. The government has too much power for you to decide, well, it's her turn to play the game now. You give up the controller so that she can play now. That's not how this works. This is the real world. Hillary Clinton tried it. It didn't work. Kamala Harris tried it. It didn't work. If you're going to have a woman president, get a woman with some fucking brains. Somebody with some ideas. Somebody who actually wants to fix problems. Not somebody who simply sees the only problem is abortion. Oh, I'm going to give people free money. You can't do that. That's what caused the inflation problem in the first place, is giving away money. And yes, that was Trump that did that. But that was also the Democratic governors shutting down states during COVID. You have to identify a problem and then identify a solution with that problem. Trump was able to effectively talk about problems and solutions. Kamala Harris had people dancing and she was throwing concerts. This is not the same thing. It's not about people being racist or people hating women. It's simply put, abortion may matter. But they can handle that on a state level. Hey, I live in a state where we will do abortions, whatever. And then most people will say, okay, well, abortion is not an issue because we can get abortions in this state. What about our economy? What about this rampant immigration thing? What about the rampant crime? What about our education system? Can our kids actually read at grade level? All these things start to come in. And we're not hearing the other side talk about that. They have a lot of unions. They're talking about, oh, we need to stand with our teachers and all this shit. I want to hear about, hey, especially our black boys can't read up to grade level. Somebody needs to do something. Even if it's something drastic like getting rid of the Department of Education. At least somebody's talking about fixing that problem. Meanwhile, on the other side, they go into HBCUs and they're strolling. No, that's not going to fix the problem. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you feel like you were owed a victory. But you weren't owed a fucking thing. It's not your turn. This is not a video game. We're not, playing ball with one ball and everybody gets a shoot at the hoop. It doesn't work like that. But there are people in this world that think it does because they have a sense of entitlement and they're arrogant and they're smug. These are the people who sit up on TV all day, who feel, hey, if Kamala Harris is the president, it's not going to affect my life at all. I'm still going to be, somebody on TV and rich and all that kind of stuff while everybody else is going to suffer. Meanwhile, the people who are suffering were saying, hey, look, I don't care if you think it's her turn or not. This is a problem that I want you to fix, or at least address it. You weren't even addressing the problem. That's why you lost. Look in the mirror and figure out why you lost. And if you listen to these people and they're telling you Kamala Harris lost because she's a black woman who was overqualified and she hit a glass ceiling and blah, 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 blah. They're lying to you. They're trying to protect their own ego. The real problem is you did not effectively look at a problem and marry it with a solution. They looked at their hierarchy of values, the things that they value in a government, and a government official, what that government official is thinking about. And then they decided, hey, what Kamala says is important, but not as important as this. Yes, I would love to have a woman president, but that's not as important as this. Hey, you know what? It might not be a bad idea to help people find homes, but this is not the way to do it. Hey, you know what? This is a good idea, but it may it may lead to these problems or whatever the case may be. But what you're getting largely is that the country is racist. All the voters are racist. They're sexists. They're homophobes. They're transphobes. They're going to put you back in chains. And you're like, this doesn't make sense. This is why you lost. You lost because you don't understand the other side. And the other side simply wants a better life for themselves and their children. They want their children to be able to read. They want their children to be able to have opportunities. They want them to have jobs. They want the crime rate to go down. They're tired of people breaking into the very Walgreens and CVS stores that they need. They're tired of not having, groceries being so much. I've seen people say ridiculous things. Oh, you voted against women's autonomy because you want cheaper gas prices. Yes. Yes, that's exactly what we did. We look at the value and says cheaper gas is more important than arguing about abortion. Because guess what? Cheaper gas affects everybody, while abortion only affects a small number of women who want to engage in that behavior. Simply not enough people. So all of the men who are running around here and their virtue signaling, how they voted for their daughters, stop it. You were comfortable, and you were so comfortable, in fact, that you didn't see anything else as a problem. You didn't understand how much drama and how many other problems people have. Your problem is, my 11-year-old daughter needs to have an abortion and have full autonomy over her body. She's 11. Who cares? Right now, people having trouble buying groceries. And you concerned about your 11-year-old daughter? Come on, man. These guys running around here with teenage daughters. Your daughter is 100% control of her own body. She just has to not have sex. That's a you problem. High groceries is an everybody problem. High gas prices is an everybody problem. No jobs, that's an everybody problem. Bad education system, that's an everybody problem. This is not just a problem for some people. This is ridiculous. It's a loony bin gym that people are running around thinking, well, we lost because you hate women. That's the stupidest thing in the world. Literally nobody hates women. You just don't like the tone that people take when they talk about women. And that's a you problem. That's not a woman's problem. And that's not the problem of the guy making the comments. That's a you issue. That's where you're supposed to chalk that up as freedom of speech and move on. Instead, you made it the reason why 60 some odd million people voted a different way. Come on, man. That's just ridiculous. It's nonsense. It shows a lack of analysis, a lack of reflection, and that you never really understand what's going on in the first place. So you can never win. You can't win because you don't even know what the cause of the problems, let alone what the solution to the problem is. Some of these people are so detached from reality that they have no conception of what's going on in the life of the average person. And those people tend to believe that the presidency and levels of government operate like an arcade game. You play, and then I got next. You play, and then it's my turn. You play, and then it's her turn. And that's not how the world works, man. It's not a full study of human behavior. And I'm going to end on this. This may be a long one, it may be short, whatever, but a lot of the people who are into politics, they get in through psychology and sociology and history and stuff like this. And these things have a very Marxist bent to them. Now, Marxism is pretty simple. It's group versus group. And as I spent the first several minutes talking about here, it's not always group versus group. Sometimes it's just individuals acting in their own best interest, and it just happens to form a group. But what they have tried to do, and what you see them do all the time on television, they try to make everything black versus white, men versus women, legal immigrants versus illegal immigrants, or nativists versus illegal immigrants, the cities versus the counties, the middle America versus the coasts, all this sort of stuff, the middle class versus the poor, etc., etc. Here is what you do when you do that. You're crushing people who don't fit into those boxes. One of the greatest casualties of the great racial discussion is not blacks or whites, believe it or not. It's the people who are both black and white. I mean, that's the first thing you should realize when you're talking about race issues, is that there are people who are both, you know? And what you will honestly see among Marxists usually is they're trying to force you into one side or the other, you know? Do you do black things, quote unquote? Are you into rap music? Is your favorite movie Boys in the Hood? What kind of TV shows do you watch? Did you marry a black woman or do you marry a white woman? What kind of school did you go to? How do you vote? All these sorts of things decide where you should be on the black side or the white side. And then the Marxists will force you on one side or the other. When in reality, you're in the middle. Well, the same thing happens economically. They look at the homeless person who is poor. He's dirt poor if he's homeless. And then you look at the people who live in mega mansions and ride around in yachts. Okay, there's a large number of people who are in the middle. But what you will kind of honestly see when it comes to Marxists, and this is historically through the Soviet Union, etc., is that they will push those people who live in suburban America. Their children go to decent schools. They have a nice car that they own. They have a nice house that they're paying a mortgage on that they can afford. And in a few years, they're going to own it. And they push you into the same camp as all the mega millionaires with all the yachts. And that's when you realize, sometimes too late, that they hate you too. And by that point in time, they've done a great deal of damage to society. I know I'm talking about, socialists and communist revolutionaries when I'm talking about China or Russia and how they started carving up people from the top all the way down to the middle. But that's how it works. That's how Marxism works. They look at only the two extremes, completely ignoring the middle, and realizing that a society should be built for the majority of people, which is the middle. The middle are the majority of people. They're not rich nor poor. They're not homeless, but, they're not riding around in yachts either. Those are the people who society are built for. Society is not built for the fashions of liberal white women who live on the coast of America. That's not what society is built for. Society is built for the majority of people. So you have to appeal to the majority of people. And the majority of people care about poor people, but they also care about themselves. And they don't hate the rich folks. Now, the idea that you should hate the rich is one of these very weird things that I don't understand. Because who provides the jobs? You think that, who provides the services? You use Amazon. Who created Amazon? Poor people? Do poor people use Amazon? Sure. Poor people didn't create it. Every time you use an Amazon, You make somebody else rich, and that should be okay with you because you're glad to have Amazon. Because it's better than life without it. And what you hear constantly from a lot of these progressives and these leftists is that, they hate Uber, they hate Lyft, they hate the gig economy, they hate DoorDash. It's like, why do you hate something that people use, hundreds of thousands of people use every single day? They hate Airbnb, and they destroyed Airbnb pretty much for the most part through government action to protect hotels. Because again, you look at hierarchies. What do you value? Hotels are usually unionized, just like taxis. So what you'll get is hatred of Uber and Lyft because they're not unionized. And you'll hatred of Airbnb because it's not a hotel, and hotels are unionized, and it's unionized labor. That's all you really need to do is what policies are they trying to destroy and why? People are trying to take care of themselves independently. That's why they do Uber and Lyft, where they set their own hours, how long they can drive, how much they can drive. They can do whatever they want. Why would you want to take that away from them? Why would you want to take away somebody being able to monetize using a spare room in their own house? Why did you want to take that away from them? The only option would be you don't want these people to move up. You want to take from them. That doesn't make sense. And it's not like the millionaires are offering spare rooms as Airbnbs in their house. It's usually average people. And this stuff used to be perfectly legal. It used to be perfectly fine to rent your room out to a passenger passing through or somebody on a vacation. This was not out of the ordinary in the past. Hey, in the hood, they used to call it jitney services. My mom used to use jitneys all the time. They hang out around the grocery store. There are guys that you pay a couple of bucks to take your groceries home. You sit in the back seat with all your groceries. They help you take the groceries to the house. Now we have Uber and Lyft. There are no jitneys anymore. Well, there probably still are jitneys, but not a lot. And guess what? I don't have a problem with that. I didn't have a problem with the jitneys. The issue is there are people, and as I said this earlier, who their values, and we should assume, let's scratch that. Let's say this. We should assume that everybody has similar goals. That you want to see other people doing well, as long as you do well too. If you're constantly moving, you don't care if other people are moving faster or slightly slower, as long as we're all moving. But then there's other people who don't want you to move, who don't really care if your life improves or not. In fact, if your life doesn't improve, that might actually help them. And those are people that are very, very few. But a lot of those people are progressives and leftists. And if you actually know anything about Karl Marx, those are the people that he used to agitation and propaganda. Those people, they come into a stable place and they agitprop. Oh, you're not moving up fast enough. This guy's got more money than you. This guy's got more opportunities than you. Hate the rich. Eat the rich. Next thing you know, people are set against each other. When in actuality, you work better together. People moved out of the middle class and out of poverty quicker before we started having all this socialist agitation than any time since. We still do okay compared to the past. And I'm talking distant past, but not as good to the recent past. Give you a good example. Henry Ford, and I think I've told this on this channel before, Henry Ford had a system here in Detroit where he would hire black people. He would go through a specific black pastor, and this black pastor would vouch for every single black man. He would write a handwritten note. That black man would take the note to Henry Ford, and Henry Ford would say, okay, or the human resource, or however that worked, he would hire that black man off the word of that black preacher. And then the black preacher started coming into it with Marxists and socialists. And these people would say, you're in bed with Henry Ford. You care more about Ford Motor Company than you care about black people. And that pastor would say, what do you mean? And then the Marxists would say, you know that the black man works in Henry Ford's factory in a harder part of the factory where he gets injured more. He works longer hours. He makes less money. He might even be discriminated against at the job. And you know that, and you keep sending black men there. And I'm trying to form a union of these black men, and you're stopping us. You're standing in the way. You won't let me talk to your congregation. The pastor will then have to look around and see all these people questioning his commitment to the black community. Oh my goodness. Am I in the bag for this white man? You know what? I'm going to prove to you that I'm not in the bag for the white man. Go ahead and speak to my congregation. The socialists, the union guys, they would go in there and talk to the congregation. And it's not like anything happened. Not like overnight a union was formed. But Henry Ford heard about it. More importantly, he's hearing about it from his black employees that if he don't pay them more, if he don't give them better positions in this here company, they're going to form a union. And he's like, what the hell? Where do you get these ideas from? Got it from the pastor's church. Union guys came in, pitched this great old idea about how we should form a union because you don't take care of us. Henry Ford talked to this pastor and said, what in the world did you do? Oh, all I did was let them talk to the men in my church. Fully. He didn't understand what he was doing. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I can't speak for him. But Henry Ford started looking at that man a different way now. Oh, you're letting these guys form unions in your church to harm my company. They're now threatening me. They're coming after me after I did them the favor of hiring them on your word. So guess what? Your word doesn't mean anything anymore. You can write as many letters as you want. I will hire the black men that I want to hire, not the black men who go to your church. So look at all the institutions that have been damaged. The relationship between Henry Ford and the black community, damaged immediately because of unions. The relationship between the black men to each other is damaged because you got a job with the help of this preacher. Now, when I try to show up and get a job, you've already kicked the ladder over because you decided the job wasn't enough for you. You're going to go in there and threaten Henry Ford that you're going to unionize his shop. So now men who go to this church don't do it. It's not any good anymore. So now my opportunities are limited because of what you did. Are we better off because everybody started threatening their bosses with unions or threatening the bosses with minimum wages? Are we better off because of that stuff? I don't think so. I don't think we're better off by talking about how much money other people make versus how much money we make. Our living conditions versus their living conditions. As long as we have the opportunity to go upwards, it shouldn't matter. Those conversations are for a caste system where there's nothing you can do. You are born into a system and you cannot ever leave it. If you were born in the 1800s and you were born in Europe and you were born into a low caste and you were born into a straight up caste system, that means whatever your father is, that's what you are. If your father was the king and you were, a prince, that's what you were. You were a prince regardless because it was through blood, right? So you could be mentally ill. You could be an alcoholic. You could be a philanderer. You could be whatever and still be a prince because you can't escape that. You can't get away from it. You can't go down. And if you're the most virtuous peasant in the world, you are more than likely it's going to stay a peasant forever. And the likelihood of you going up was never going to happen. It's not the same in the United States. There's plenty of rich men who have gambled, done drugs, messed with whores or whatever, and lost everything. Meanwhile, hardworking, middle-class guys can work their way up. That's the best system ever conceived by human beings. It is. We do not live in a caste system. Marxism should not apply here. Because you could be rich today and broke in 5 years. You could be broke today and be rich in 5 years. It all depends on your opportunities, your education level, and et cetera, et cetera. There are other things, right? But what we have done is made people believe that you live in a caste system. You were born in the ghetto, you're always going to be in the ghetto. That's not true. You were born in the hood, you're always going to be in the hood. It's not true. Oh, he was born a suburbanite in the suburbs of Detroit or in the suburbs of Baltimore. So that's always what you're going to be. It's not true. It's not. You don't live in a caste system. Economically, you can move up. All you have to do is dedicate yourself, educate yourself, change certain things about your personality and your behavior and your psychology, and you can be a better person. Meanwhile, the socialist wants to tear other people down. We need to make income inequality not a thing anymore, not by teaching people how they can increase their income or increase their wealth by allowing them to buy houses, not taxing the houses so that we take it from them as soon as they die. Things that might lead to wealth building, making it easier to be an entrepreneur if you have that sort of proclivity, that sort of ambition. Or let's say you just want to be a guy who punches a clock 9 to 5. That's all you ever want to do. All right, let's make that easy too. We can do stuff like that and where people can work their way out of the caste system that they were born into. And hey, if you're rich and you're like a rich valley girl who wants to snort cocaine and party all day and you blow daddy's money and now you end up going down, 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 and now you're a waitress, well, that's your fault. You think that stuff doesn't happen, it does. It happens all the time. People blow hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. They do it all the time. Athletes do it all the time. That's why my favorite documentary ever is how I think it's How Athletes Go Broke, because you get to see how people who had millions and millions and millions of dollars lose it all within 20 years. And this goes back to what I said at the very beginning. You look at an issue like poverty as the issue with poverty is that you just need to give them some money. We do that. We give athletes millions and millions of dollars. They still end up broke because they don't have the education. They don't know how to invest. They make bad decisions. They go out and buy Corvettes, and they buy their mama a house, and they buy their auntie a house, and then they buy everybody a house. And who's going to pay the mortgage and all this stuff? They have a bunch of kids that they can't take care of. Then they get divorced, and she takes half, and all this stuff happens. Because the real world happens. But I think I've made my point. There's a reason why Donald Trump won. And it's not just because people are racists. It's because some people can see a bigger picture. If somebody is telling you that it's because of race, it's because of gender, it's because of LGBTs and all this kind of stuff, they're being myopic. That may have a little bit to do with it. People do get tired of the virtue signaling and the identity politics and stuff like that. But mostly the issue is they looked at the Democratic Party and they saw people who were dancing while the world burned. You're having a dance party with Beyonce while milk prices are going up. While my kids are not being properly educated, you're having a dance party with Beyonce. That was a perfect line. It's showing people that, hell, Donald Trump was born rich. And even he has a better, more attached understanding of the suffering of average people than Kamala Harris. And a lot of her supporters. Even the ones who were born poor, like Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey was born dirt fucking poor. But Oprah has been wealthy for over 30 years. She's detached. She's gone. She don't remember those days of eating, Red River clay in Mississippi. She don't remember them days. They're part of her and who she is. But those days are so far in the rearview mirror, she don't even think about it anymore. She can't. Otherwise, Oprah will be on the other side telling people, this is how you can build wealth. This is how you can use what you're good at so that you can also make money. Jay-Z is far away from selling dope. Although he uses it for raps. But he's so far removed from the days of when he was living in the tenements, selling crack. That stuff only comes up as a story he tells now. Now, he has more of an understanding than Oprah. He's not as detached and ridiculous as Oprah, but he's pretty far off. These people become billionaires and forget where they came from. They forget how they got there. They forgot the elbow grease needed to get where they are. And that's part of the issue. You have a lot of poor people who are Democrats and leftists, and they get to the point where they're billionaires, and then they turn around and they say, it's more important to party with politicians than it is to help other people raise up. It makes no sense. They go against everything that they actually did. Sitting back listening to Jay-Z is infuriating to me, because Jay-Z knows where he came from to where he is. The guy's not even 60 years old. But that should be inspiring to anybody who listens to the sound of my voice or has followed his career or his life. He was broke. He was poor. Single family home. Projects. One mother, no dad. And through a talent that he was able to exploit, he became a billionaire. Other business ventures attached themselves to him because he didn't make stupid decisions. He may have made some decisions as far as stabbing somebody, but for the most part, Jay-Z became a well-established brand. Jay-Z don't have no outside kids. Jay-Z don't have a bunch of baby mamas. Jay-Z don't go to jail. Jay-Z don't even speed. He don't get caught with no drugs. He don't do anything. He just reinvests his money, buys his art pieces, dances when his wife makes music, and then that's it. He raps when he wants to. He works when he wants to. Wow. He should be somebody that you should look up to. And then you got other people. You know, as much as I love DMX, he made millions of dollars. Couldn't stop smoking crack. Couldn't stop doing drugs. Despite his ambition, despite his work ethic, despite his talent, his other failings is what took him out of the game. That's how life is. That's how life works. Sometimes people have the similar or same talent, but they don't have the similar or same temperament. They don't have the similar or same intelligence. This is why I said individuals matter. Because you could take people from the same neighborhood, same fucking blood, different temperaments, different opportunities. They end up in different places. But it's not about racism. It's about people wanting more for themselves. We finally see a United States where people have seen enough. They said, this is enough. This inflation is murder. The unemployment is crazy. The illegal immigration is psychotic. Why are you doing this? And they said enough was enough. That's why Kamala Harris lost. Not because of racism. Not because of sexism. Not because you weren't progressive enough. Not because you didn't talk about, free health care for everybody. That wasn't it. People were suffering, and your side danced with Beyonce. That's why you lost.